of Gold Diggers. My name is Miss Newlove, and as usual, I have a great guest in the studio. But before I introduce her and what she does, I'd like to say a big thank you to all my sponsors, and especially those that support me. I've had a lot of phone calls over the recent weeks of encouragement and, people telling me that I'm doing well, and it means so much to me. So I'd just like to say a big thank you. They know who they are. Thank you so much for the encouragement. Also a big thank you to Omega House Multimedia Company, who power Omega Live TV. They are located on West Green Road in North London, right next door to Uncle John's Bakery. And as I said, they're a multimedia company, so they're there to cover all your media needs, print media, visual media. They cover events. In terms of print, they do leaflets. It's coming up to Christmas, your parties, your flyers. They do key rings. They do photography as well, and they do amazing wedding photography. So don't forget to check out Omega House Multimedia Company. They power Omega Live TV. We're live here on Facebook, and we're also live on YouTube. Omega Live TV on YouTube. Please share, because we have a very inspirational guest in the studio, a woman that helps transform lives. Her name is Dr. Yvette Ankrah, MBE. She's live in the studio today. She's a transformational coach, an educator, a motivational speaker. Yes, she's here today. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm feeling the kente.
Loving it. Gift from my husband. Thank you, husband.
So Yvette, you're on Gold Diggers, and Gold Diggers is all about bringing to light people that are doing great things in their communities, professions, and various societies. And it's such a pleasure to have someone like you on the show, because you might not be that celebrity, but as I said, you're a doctor and you have an MBE.
Yes.
So, you're a very amazing person, successful person. So it just goes to prove that you don't need to be famous or be a celebrity to be successful. And, that's why you're on the show. It's all about bringing to light people like yourself, to our viewers, people in the Ghanaian diaspora as well. Yep. So, Yvette, I don't even know where to start with you, but what I like to do is I always like to talk to my guests about their childhood, because I like to start from childhood, bring it into teens, then bring it into where you are now, and then we talk about, all the juicy stuff. So as a young child, did you ever think you'd be where you are now? Did you have any, it will kind of give it away, but did you know what you wanted to do as a child?
I think when I was very, very young, I did want to be a journalist, because my goal was always to change the world. That's always been what I wanted to do. So I'm going to change the world. I'm going to be a journalist and fight for all these causes. I've always been one that was always wanted to speak up, and if something was what I felt was wrong or unjust, I wanted to talk about it. And then when I got older, I wanted to be a criminal psychologist. Yeah, I know. However, I didn't get the grades that I wanted to be to do a pure psychology degree, so I actually ended up doing a joint journalism and psychology degree.
Okay.
So that was my first degree. So that's kind of what I did. But I was always very forthright. Maybe stubborn would be the word that my parents might have used for me. Outspoken as a young child. So it's not surprising that I ended up doing some of the things I did.
Okay. So you studied.
Yeah, journalism and psychology is my first degree. But I was actually writing when I was 16.
Okay.
So I was writing for a lot of black arts magazines, and that was where I started my career. So I remember interviewing R&B artists at the time and asking them about their misogynistic lyrics. It was the kind of thing, so I'm 16 in this room sort of saying, yeah, those lyrics that you're talking about, I'm not sure about how they portray women.
Oh, wow.
So, yes.
So you've always had that feminist kind of spirit from a young age.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it started off, and then I was writing for different arts magazines, so I got to interview a lot of Black British writers, which was really great. And the late Andrea Levy, I remember interviewing her, and it was one of the times I made a mistake. I'd shorthanded the title of her book, and she phoned me up and blasted me. Never did that mistake again, which is good to learn. But I had some really interesting experiences really at quite a young age.
Okay. So how was it, you're of Ghanaian heritage, so how was it growing up you know.
Loud. I'm one of 4 children. Our house, when I was quite young, I always seemed that there was something happening every weekend. We always had people over.
Okay.
I was always serving. There was lots of popcorn and peanuts and Coke. I grew up in the 80s in North London.
Okay.
So it was a slightly different community as well. So my parents had come in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
So, you know.
Yeah, like my parents, my dad actually studied here early 70s.
Yeah, so my dad was actually here in sort of like the early 60s.
Wow.
So they were that kind of pioneering generation,
Yeah.
that the group that came, the students that stayed, as they're known as, you know, in literature.
Yeah.
And they're from that generation of it. So it was always their friends and family members that come at that time that would be at the house. And, you know, there was always music. There was always, you know, it just felt like there was a constant party. There was always, that's what it was like growing up. There was lots of noise. I didn't learn Twi, so sorry. I went back in my 20s. I went back in my 20s to learn, but also that generation, a lot of them didn't teach their children the language because they felt that we would have trouble integrating. That's not the case, but that's what it was at the time. And if you think about that time for them, they were coming when they couldn't get accommodation. They couldn't get even childminders easily. It was a very different time to what we have now.
Even to the late 80s, early 90s.
It's a completely different set of people. Even getting the food we eat, trying to do those things, very different world. And they kind of, it now seems that, you know, can go everywhere. You know, you've got Uncle John's Bakery, you've got all those kind of places, which were not necessarily available, those kind of spaces. And, you know, thinking about now, it's so easy to see a Ghanaian community. It wasn't that like that when they came.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of am the child from that generation.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear. So how important was education in your family? Because as you said, you know, your parents came at that stage when most came to study. Like I said, my dad came at that period to go to university. So, you know, education was so important to him. As with my mum, it was totally different. So
it was, I mean, it was you know, in my thesis, there's a title that sort of says education, 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 which Blair came as his mantra when he came into he got that from a Ghanaian, right? So it was, that's all I heard. Education, education, education. It was get an education, you know, come here, we're here, you get an education. That was what I heard growing up, that's what I internalized, it's part of, you know, what I did and who I am. So, you know, I was always going to go to university, and I remember actually saying to my mother that I didn't want to go because I said, you know, I can be a pioneering journalist without going to university. And she just said, you will go. That was it. There was no discussion.
No choice.
No. And I was like, and the way she said it, with the look, I was going. And I did go.
You had no choice.
No.
So Yvette Ankrah, your doctor, you have a PhD.
Yes.
Not easy.
No.
I congratulate you.
Thank you very much. It was a long journey.
At what stage in your life did you decide to embark on getting a PhD?
In my 30s, actually. I had done my master's, and when I went to do my master's, I went to do it for some completely different reasons. The topic I was going to do was not what I ended up doing my thesis on.
Okay.
I went because I was working in the voluntary sector at the time, and what I wanted to do was work more with the corporates and the voluntary sector, get the voluntary sector to kind of understand the corporate world a bit better and take on some of that way of working. However, that didn't work out for me. That particular lecture didn't really move me, didn't engage me, but the one on gender, race, identity did, and it coincided with me going back to Ghana at that time, and it was this kind of whole shift of identity. And it was then I said, this is a lot changed in that trip and a lot changed in that work, and I really wanted to understand about second generation identity. So I did that for the masters, and then took that on when I did the PhD.
Study for masters?
So that was sociology. So I did communities, organisations, and social change.
Oh, wow.
So all about, you know, again, trying to change the world. So there's a theme that runs through it, right? And then with the PhD, I was originally looking at people that had returned to Ghana.
Oh, wow.
But then it shifted to look at middle class identity and middle class Ghanaians, because a lot of people that were talking about going back were a certain type of person. So I was interested to see what was going on with this discussion, how they form their identity. Because often, especially if you read the literature, if you see anything that's written about black people, it often says black and working class. Well, actually, that was not what I was finding amongst the Ghanaian community I was talking to. They weren't working class.
Yeah.
They may have been, but they definitely weren't now. So I was looking at how they found their identity, how they found themselves being black in this country, being Ghanaian, you know, being British. How do you mix all those identities?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of it's about my story and my journey as well. So yeah.
Wow, amazing.
It took me 10 years to complete.
10 years.
10 years because I got very sick in the middle of it. So
Which we're going to talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
If you've just tuned in, we are with the phenomenal Dr. Yvette Ankrah, who is a transformational coach, and she also has an MBE.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that happen? Because it's amazing enough to be a doctor, but to have the title doctor and then also have the MBE on the end is such a, you know, it's such a great achievement. You know, so how did the MBE come about?
Well, the MBE was
an MBE stands for Member of the Order of the British Empire.
Yeah.
Which is quite deep, and we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
We're going to get into all that stuff.
So,
how did the MBE itself come about?
I was awarded that for the Queen's Birthday Honours in 2017, and I'd been doing some campaigning work back in 2015. So, I was working with women in business. That was my predominant thing. I still do that, but not in the same way. And at the time, I was involved in the manifesto of women in business. So the idea was that we were campaigning in that 2015 election to get more support for women in business, because we were finding that there was not a lot of support in terms of training, finance. We also were campaigning for better representation, because at the time we didn't have as many female parliamentarians as we do now. So we actually wanted to see that change on the world stage as well, because if you're not at the table, no one's listening to you.
Exactly.
So I was involved in that, and I was doing grassroots campaigning as well, mobilising people nationally. I was engaged in that, so I wanted to see change happen. And if you're self-employed at the time, you couldn't get any benefits. So if anything happened to you, there was no safety net, which you would get if you were employed. So we were looking for those things, and some of those things have changed. But also, self-employment is not for everybody, and I wouldn't say that everybody should go out and start up a business, right? But if you are trying to get back in, what routes were there? So it's really interesting to see what's changed in the last 4 years. So you now have a lot more back to work schemes. You've got that going on. We've got the representation on the political level. So there has been change. You've now got that safety net for the self-employed.
Yes.
So obviously somebody heard something. And I got this random phone call out of the blue saying, we'd like to give you an MBE. And I thought, okay. And you're technically not supposed to tell anybody, but my husband was in the house when I got this message.
Oh, you're not supposed to tell
You're not supposed to tell anyone because it's not announced, yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
But I actually said to my husband, and the reason I said this was because I said, this has just happened, but I don't know if I'm going to accept it. That was my first thought. I thought it was like, wow. Then the second thought was, do I take this? Because at the time, and still now, I'm a scholar of race.
Yes.
And as you said, it's a member of the Order of the British Empire, and it's the E in the Empire that is the problem.
Yes.
So my first thought was, do I accept this? And he said, no, of course you do. I was like, hang on a second, I need to think. And, I'm going to talk a bit more about that, the whole empire might, because we're going to be talking about why people might not accept it. But what I decided was that what the award is for is to showcase your achievements in British society, to show what you've done in your community. Similar as you're talking about gold diggers, what it is about and who it's representing. And I said, actually, it says that we're here. People like me are here. We're part of this country. We contribute. And yes, we should be acknowledged for our contributions. So part of me was saying that's why. The other part said, okay, will it enable me to open some doors? Will it give me a platform to use my voice? And if that's the case, great. I'm going to open those doors. I'm not slamming them behind me. I'm going to keep my foot in that door and keep it open for the others that come behind me. So that's why I think it is important that people do accept these things if they believe that, they're going to take them, because it shows that we're here. It shows other people that we can achieve, that we are very much part of the things that we do. There are so many people that haven't taken it, but also so many prominent people who have, and even people who are, people who research race, who are prominent in race relations, etc., have accepted it, and it does, raise their profile and enable them to use their voice in a wider way. So for me, that's why I took it, because my father was like, yeah, you know when you go to the palace, you're going to wear kente. I said, yes, I know. And I did. And I went in full kente to the palace.
I think it's a good thing you did accept it.
Yeah.
I would if I was in your position.
Yeah. So for me, it was an important thing to sort of show, and I went there with, in my thing to show that, yes, we are part of this. We are, we've been here for a long time. And
especially if you're born here.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't see, well, I don't really want to go into it, so I don't need anyone bashing me. But I don't see the big deal. Like, I feel like if you're British born, why not accept it? But then, like you said, a lot of people do have, issues when you're going back into all the, they take it far, like they go into slavery and stuff like that. I notice more West Indians do not accept it. I don't know if you'd agree with me or if you've noticed that.
There's a mix of different people. I mean, Georgia Poet is the most recent person who didn't, and he's of Ugandan origin. And I don't disagree with anything that they say in terms of why their personal reasons for not taking it. But in the same way that I wouldn't want them to say that I shouldn't accept mine. That's my choice, and say it's their choice not to accept it. And yes, empire is an issue. And David Olasanga, the historian, he did decide to take his MBE. And one of the things he said is that when they were looking at changing it, they said perhaps maybe making it an order of excellence. So, which gets rid of the word empire. They're unlikely to change that word empire anytime soon. But I see it as, yes, it's about excellence. It's about contributing. It's about showing the things that you have done. And I'm taking that side of it and saying it as someone who can represent people that are here. I want people coming up to see that people that look like them are there. People that look like them do contribute to society. And yes, you can do that. And yes, you can be part of it. And that's my thinking behind all of that.
Okay, amazing. So, Yvette, can you tell us about the biggest challenge you've had to face?
Where do we begin?
That has transformed you as a person?
I would say going through the ill health.
Yeah, because you did say.
That was...
Can you talk us through, like, your career and then go into the health, if that...
Yeah, so career-wise, I mean, I said I trained as a journalist, but I didn't go into journalism. I deliberately didn't. I ended up going into PR and press work.
Okay.
So I would be media training people and doing all that kind of work and working in the press office. And I started doing this when I was, 21? So the first bit is discrimination in all ways. So I love the intersectional. So it's, are they discriminating at that time because of my age, because of my race, because of my gender, all at the same time? You didn't always know. But I remember going for jobs and having people say, well, your experience is too black.
Really?
Because my early years had been working on black-focused magazines and black-focused events and arts, and I worked at the Africa Centre. I did all this stuff. I did internships, and I had a recruitment agent actually say that to me without. I thought that was really interesting. So, having that very early on, understanding that but I'm like, well, I see it as I've got diverse experience because I've worked in these different fields, but you're seeing it like that, then that's the take you're going to take on it. And then going into spaces where when I worked in a PR agency, I was the first woman that was there, so it was an all-male environment. So a woman of colour and a woman in this very sort of white male environment, and Asian male as well. And then, a lot of the clients I'm working with were white men as well. So that's a completely different environment, having to hold your own in those spaces. And it was quite a sexist environment in lots of ways, I found. The idea that you're there because you're sort of dolled up and supposed to be, but your intelligence didn't matter and everything else. And it was sort of this young, pretty things, this idea in their heads. It's like, that doesn't work for me. So, coming through that. And then I kind of realised I didn't want to work in that space, and because it wasn't sitting well with my values and who I am. So I went to work in the voluntary sector. I was doing lots of volunteering at the same time. But, to put some context, I've always had a job, work experience and volunteered, or simultaneously, right? So it's never been something that I've just done on the side. I've always done that. As soon as I graduated, I got a job and I thought, what happens at 5 o'clock? Oh, well, I just go home. So I did evening classes. Then I took on a freelance gig, and so I've always multitasked, which is how I got quite a lot of experience. And then through the the voluntary work, I then ended up working in the arts again and worked on a project called Africa Beyond, which was about getting African arts and culture into large mainstream organisations. So to make sure that they did more programming. So we're talking the V&A, we're talking South Bank Centre, British Museum, and encouraging also more people of African origin to go to those places. I mean, hey, a lot of our artwork's in there, we should go and see it.
Yeah.
So
it's true, yeah.
And enable them to engage more audiences.
Yes.
Because they'd have to say, we want all these people coming, but people would say, well, we don't go to museums, so why not? You know, you have just as much right to be in those spaces as anybody else. So I did lots of that kind of work. So I've always kind of championed things and done different things. And done
people like you have made a change, because times have, like, now, you know, all this hard work that you and other people have put in, you know, has made a change.
Yeah, and this was over 10 years ago that I was doing this kind of work. I also worked for an organisation which is still going called Black Trading and Enterprise Group. So I was working with Black and Asian charities mostly, helping them train, helping them get funding, helping them, you know, actually be able to support their communities better. So I did a lot of that work. So I've gone into lots of different spaces, always with the kind of, how do I make the world a better place kind of thing.
Diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, that's kind of, that's
which
always
is now big.
Exactly, now it's big.
Yeah.
But then the thing about that was I always worked in a particular way. So as I said, I always had a job for this, a job for that, doing something else. I was constantly busy. I didn't know how to relax. I didn't know how to not be doing 1,000 things at once. And I continued doing that because that's what I'd always done. So throughout these different phases, I experienced stress and burnout. And I kind of ignored it and pushed it down and just carried on until I got to the point I couldn't do that anymore. So about 6-7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a condition called fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia, for those who don't know, is a condition which affects affects you in loads of ways, but affects your muscles. So you can experience quite a lot of pain, you experience quite a lot of fatigue. If you've ever had really bad flu and you ache all over, that's what it can feel like, and that's what it felt like for me. Or if you're a gym person, if you've hit the gym hard and your muscles ache, that's what my muscles would feel like, and I hadn't done anything.
Wow, this is interesting.
Yeah, so I developed chronic symptoms and chronic pain. It affected everything, and this happened in the middle of my PhD.
Wow.
Which is why it took me a little while to finish it, because I had to relearn how to read. My brain couldn't figure it out. I would forget people's names. I would have this, complete. I couldn't really play with my son, who was a toddler at the time, and it completely, meant that I couldn't do so much for quite a long time. I was still, by the way, trying to do this PhD. I was still running a business, which I'd launched at the time, and doing all these things, but doing it, I don't even know how. So even when I was doing this campaign, I was doing this in constant pain.
Wow.
Wouldn't recommend it. But, for me, it was when I finally had another stint in hospital, having a procedure that I didn't need, again caused by this disease, and I said, I'm done. I'm done. So I started making changes and started doing a lot more internal work as well. And I'm completely pain-free now.
Wow.
So that's why.
You make it sound so easy.
It wasn't easy. It was a journey, but the whole thing was that I made a decision that I wasn't going to live like this anymore. I couldn't live like this anymore, and I had to make changes. I couldn't be that person anymore because that was not serving me. And success, you've got to define it for yourself. Success for me, it wasn't, I didn't aim, whenever I did things, I wasn't aiming to get an MBE. The doctorate was on the list, and I was determined to finish that. But, for me, the success is not about necessarily becoming a celebrity. I've never been interested in that. It's, affecting change. It's making things happen. It's changing people's lives. That's what I'm interested in. That's what makes me happy. And, I'm also very much a family person. So it's all about, my family as well. So that's, for me, that's important. So it's been able to spend time with people I love and care about, being able to do the things that make me happy, bring me joy, and being able to spread love and to help other people, spread their love and joy to the world as well. So that's why I do what I do.
So before we go into you being a transformational coach, you're also a motivational speaker. So did this come, when did you start getting into speaking?
Well, speaking's been, I've always had to speak in different ways throughout my career,
Yeah.
whether I've wanted to or not. And it wasn't, and it's not something that I'd say I'd rush towards. And I'll be happily speaking about my business before, because I made a decision again to change how I did my business in the last year or so. But I'd be talking about topics that didn't have anything to do with me in a way. So I was talking about, you know, marketing on the shoestring or business goals and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was not personal, and there was nothing of me in it.
Yeah, that's work. So with the motivational speaking, obviously it's like storytelling.
Yeah. And that was, so this, I made the decision to stop hiding, to be visible, hence why I'm here as well. And
yes, girl.
Yeah, you know.
You need to make yourself visible.
Exactly, definitely.
There's accolades. I'm going to make her visible, trust me.
And, you know, in order for me to tell people about, you know, why I'm passionate about avoiding stress and burnout, why I'm passionate about the things that I'm passionate about, I need to speak, and I need to actually get out there.
You need to tell your story.
Exactly. So this March, I took myself up to Sheffield, and on International sort of Women's Day, around that time, I was talking at an event, and it was the first time I talked about some of this stuff.
Okay.
And talked about my journey and a little bit about my story. Because before, as I said, it was stuff that's work, in a way.
Work related,
yeah. So I started to be much more open about that, and talk about the realities of what happens when you are somebody who pushes yourself until your body can't do it anymore.
Which is important, because you don't know who you're healing, you don't know, you know, that, like even you talking to me now, I've picked up things. Do you understand? So it's so important to let people know about, you know, what you've been through, and you know.
And that's the thing, and on the outside, and particularly with something like fibromyalgia, people say, but you look well. So people would never know, because the days I was bad, you didn't see me out in bed, you know.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things, so people don't always understand what other people may be going through or what's happening to them, and they see, you know, their world, especially if you're looking on social media, you might see what looks like this amazing life for somebody, but you don't really know what's going on for them, you know, what's going on with their mental health, what's going on with their physical health. So I'm really big on, you know, maintaining your mental well-being as well as your physical well-being, because, you know, all of these things will impact on you, and it will. And the mind-body connection is really important. You know, what's going on up here will affect here. End of.
Definitely. So you're passionate about working with small businesses, especially women, female entrepreneurs, and now I'm starting to understand why. You know, but when did you make that decision that, you know, I'm gonna start helping women, you know? That
was after I had my son, actually. So I moved out of London when I was pregnant, and my husband said, you need to go and meet people. And I'm like, why? Why?
What, in the area?
Yeah, I said, I'm fine. And so he said, no, go, you know, do some socialising. And I was like, so I was getting a bit, but I did go out and socialise, and I went to some mother and baby groups. But I wasn't talking about babies in these spaces. I was talking business. Oh yeah. So, you know.
I'll probably do that. I wasn't really into that baby stuff. Even when I had, my children were young, and I would go, I wouldn't really, you know, they'll be talking, oh, I breastfeed 5 times a day. I'll just be like, oh.
Yeah, so you know. I was, you know, at the time I'd been working with arts organisations, so I'd been coaching arts organisations and helping them do the back end side of their business. So, you know, people are very good at what they do, but they're not always good at, you know, their business planning and their strategy. So I was doing that kind of work. And then I moved out of London, so I had to rebuild networks anyway. But what I found at these groups, well, there were lots of women who had great ideas and no one to speak to. And some of them would speak to their husbands, but if their husbands didn't run a business, they're not necessarily the right people to speak to. There used to be a lot more business advice that was quite central, but it got very fragmented. So where could you go to get support and advice? I'm actually looking around thinking, actually, there isn't anywhere. I also
in the area that you live in.
But also, you know, London's slightly different, but even then it got broken down a lot in London, because each borough had somewhere you could go, and then that sort of disappeared. So then, you know, what do people do? And I also met people that had businesses and nobody knew about them. So I said, okay, well, this is kind of what I do. I'm just going to change my target market and work with women. And that's exactly what I did. So when my son got a little bit older, I did some work pro bono for some people just to build up some case studies and saying, actually, does it translate well? And it did. And then I launched the network locally and did that. I did have to take a job as well in London at one point to begin with, and on my commute I wrote my ebook, I built my website, And 9 months
So
today.
you're an author as well?
Oh, it's an ebook. The book. That's,
okay.
that's next year. But it's a small ebook that I wrote a few years ago.
And what's that ebook called? What is it?
Oh, that was about 6 steps of balancing your business. So it's about.
Okay. Well, it's important to let people know.
It is,
it's
but it's not available anymore.
Oh,
that's why I've taken it off because
okay.
that's the old branding.
Please do another one with this new branding.
Don't worry. There's
a
next one coming.
Okay.
And I used my commute to do all of that because I was like, I had tight time because I had to get back for my son.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous. I'd be, getting up at 5:45, picking him up in his baby grow, getting him ready. It was hard. And 9 months of the day, I left, launched my network the next week, and I haven't looked back.
Wow, amazing. If you've joined us just now, sorry, I got lip gloss on my teeth. We've been speaking to Dr. Yvette Ankrah, MBE. She's a transformational coach. She's an educator, a motivational speaker. What else do you do? She does it all. She's done it all.
Pieces.
Yeah, we've been talking about her amazing career, and we're now getting into the juicy part of her current business, her current career.
Yeah.
How can I say, as a transformational coach?
Yes.
But if you haven't been watching, we are live now, but you can also watch the show afterwards. We're on Omega Live TV on Facebook and on YouTube.
So this year I'd already was planning to do this, but I made the split. So before, my business was called Ankrah Associates, and I did much more sort of strategy and consulting work with coaching in there. And then what I've done is the consulting work, I've moved towards Lightcliff Consulting, because I work in partnership with other people in that space. And I've had the Yvette Ankrah Transformational Coaching come under my own branding.
Yeah.
So in that, it's very much the coaching. So I run programs, I do one-to-one coaching. I'm launching a group program in the new year. And the reason I did that is because I went and trained in neuro-linguistic programming, which is when I was doing that training is when I had the last shift and got rid of the fibromyalgia. So it just, that was when...
What is that?
Neuro-linguistic programming. So it's a coaching technique which is about modelling excellence, but it's also about looking at how your thoughts control your behaviour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we use questioning techniques to get inside and kind of sort of help you shift and change habits.
Okay.
Because
some would ask, why do we need the life coaches? Why do we need transformational coaches? Why do we need well-being coaches? I used to say that a lot. I used to think, what's all this? Like this coach. But now, I'm starting to understand as I talk to people, as I interview people, and I meet people from different walks of life. It's very important, like even having a mentor, having an accountability.
Exactly. So that's
someone to be accountable to.
That's what we do.
To reach your goals.
Yeah, so we help you be accountable. We also, can help you change how your behaviour is. So there's particular habits. Habits are shortcuts to behaviour, right? So you quickly do something and you learn that, and you can unlearn that if it's no longer serving you. And if there's a lot going on, thoughts-wise, that's not helpful. So anxiety, those kind of things, you can use NLP to help that. You can use it to completely transform people's lives. You get people who, anything from being afraid to speak on stage to, social anxiety, to all different things. You can use it in so many ways. I focus on business. So I focus on how you show up at work, how you show up in what you do, how you can use that to be better in the space that you're in. And when you start changing that, it affects everything. It affects your health, it affects your relationships, it affects all aspects of you once you start actually really understanding who you are, what you want, and how you can connect with yourself better.
But working with women, I mean, when you start to go deep, it must go past, you must dig up certain things, and because a lot of people must open up to you.
They do. But I'm very clear. I'm not a counsellor.
Do you have a cut-off? Yeah,
I'm not a counsellor and I'm not a therapist. So, because
transformational is a big word, like...
Yeah, but it does. So, for example, you can, without having to go into, for example, if somebody's had a traumatic experience, I would not deal with that traumatic experience. I'd refer them on to somebody who specialises in that. But even just in terms of how you start looking after yourself. I'm really big on self-care. It's one of the things I talk about a lot. I've given a talk this morning about self-care and the importance of it in your business.
Okay.
You know, those kind of things.
So yours is more centered around business.
It's focused
but
around.
Then you tap into.
It will be.
Too much.
I'm not going to go into deep if there's trauma. I don't touch that because that's not my place to do that. But for example, you know, getting you to understand who you are, what you want, you know, your relationship with money, your relationship, you know, with yourself and self-care, you know, you're placing your value on yourself, all of those kind of things. So if you say, you know, you want to have a successful, thriving business, but you don't want to price in a way because you have a fear about pricing, that's going to have a problem with your business, right?
Yes.
So looking at things like that. And again, if you say, you know, when you're looking at success, how are you defining success? Do you know what it really truly means for you? Not somebody else's version, your version. And if that for you is not what you're doing, how do we get you to do what you really want to do? How do you do something that makes your heart sing? And this is not about what your parents said you should do, not about what your best friend said, it's about what you want to do. And owning that and acknowledging those things. Okay. So that's why you can truly transform people.
It makes sense, definitely. Wow, amazing. So you've had over 20 years experience of working with different businesses. You've worked with big companies that are FSTE listed. Yes, they are. I got that right. Financial Times, Stock Exchange. So you've worked with a variety of people, a variety of businesses. But who have you worked with and you thought to yourself, wow, like I've worked with this person? If you can disclose on
not necessarily
TV, or just like
it's not
you thought to yourself.
I think it's, I mean, I've done things like, I've met all different kind of people, but I think for me, it's when I've been sitting in rooms, particularly when I was doing the art stuff, and I've got representatives from the big arts organisation in that room, and they're all making a commitment to do something different, to do something better, and then you see the results. Then you start seeing amazing artists being programmed, and you start to see the results of it. That is when I kind of get joy from it, and when I say, yeah, that's, you know, I did that, or I was part of that, and affecting change in that way. And seeing people that I interviewed years ago become, you know, international authors and, you know, really successful, and saying, oh, I met those person years ago. But it's not, you know, it's not necessarily the companies. I've worked in lots of different things, but it's where can I affect change? That's always been, you know, for me, that's the thing. And, you know, being invited to different meetings, etc. I speak to people in the same way, you know, and I'll be chatting away to someone, it's like, oh, he's the Minister of so-and-so. Oh, is he? Oh, okay. Because in my...
So you're not really phased, or you don't get starstruck and stuff like that?
I mean, if it had been Prince, that's a different matter.
Was you a fan of Prince?
Big fan, right.
But when he passed away,
that was heartbreaking. But in terms of those kind of things, it's kind of those people, I see them as their people, and you're connecting with people, and it's about connection and making sure that, you know, if you've got something to say that's important, how do you connect with that person? And that's how I see them, as connecting with another sort of person and human, and getting on those levels, rather than worrying about title or anything, because often I haven't realised I have one anyway.
So how do you find the balance now? You know, you've spoken about your past, your present, you know, state now. Like, how you seem very happy.
I am.
I can feel it.
I am.
I can really feel it. Trust me. You're even making me feel happy.
Which is good.
Yeah. I have a good aura, and I can sense that. Everything you're saying, you're passionate, genuine, you know, and it's heartfelt. Like what you do is you really do it from the heart, and it's not just about doing it for the money. No,
I mean, it's a business, so it's about getting paid, because it's important to be paid, and that's why I would also tell my clients. I'll also, you know, I've got a pro bono client at the moment, and I do give back to charities and do stuff like that. But it is about affecting change. So for me, particularly with transformational work, I love working with people who've got things that they want to bring to the world. And when they are empowered, they then go and empower others.
Okay.
And that's for me the important thing. I can't do everything myself, but if, you know, I work with you and then you go and support somebody and you support somebody and you support somebody, and then suddenly we've got a different world that we live in. And that is what I love doing.
Amazing. It's been so great having you in the studio. We're kind of running out of time, but I personally want to know about you know, when you're going to Ghana and when you're going to let the Ghana, you know, go to Ghana and do some work, because this, what you do here is amazing.
Well,
but if you went to Ghana and did some work, that would be amazing
2020's plans. So if anyone's listening who wants to work with me in Ghana, please get in contact, because there is a project that I'm talking to somebody about right now, about getting involved with.
Actually, what are you working on at the moment, apart from your personal business? I mean, what other stuff have you got in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'm involved in a few projects which are sort of multi-people projects where we're going to be bringing some new stuff together, because it is about, you know, other change makers, helping people move forward in a way that's authentic and from the heart, and not, you know, a lot of the gimmicky stuff you see online. I don't like a lot of that. It's not my energy. It doesn't work for me. So I'm working with a group of people in the UK doing that, and there's also a project in Ghana that I'm talking to somebody about, and then doing just this, but with Ghanaian companies and Ghanaian organisations.
That would be amazing.
So that's what I want to do. I, you know, want to do more in Ghana. I want to connect more. The plan is I'm hoping to go next year as a family thing anyway. Yes. But I really do want to spend some time working there. So my ideal would be that we spend time there, you know, and I work between Ghana and here. That's kind of what I'm working towards. So, you know, I've got 10 years for my son to fly the nest, we hope. And in that time, I want to be able to say, right, I can then, you know, between now and then build it up so that when he is of age, I can spend much more time doing stuff over there. But that is the plan going forward.
Amazing. Yeah. So we've had Dr. Yvette Ankrah, MBE, in the studio with us today. She's a transformational coach, an educator, motivational speaker, what else?
Consultant,
business consultant. I mean, she's done a lot. She has a lot of accolades, and yeah, she's a doctor, and like I said, she's got an MBE. So if people want to reach out to you, work with you, contact you, how can they get in contact?
You can find me. I'm on Facebook under Yvette Ankrah Coaching. I'm YvetteAnkrah.com is my website. I'm on LinkedIn as well and Twitter, so you can find me on different social media platforms. Work with me as I do one-to-one, and although I predominantly focus on women, I have been coaching men recently.
I was going to ask you that, actually. I didn't even ask you that.
That's okay.
Do you work with men as well?
I have been recently, but that's through the consulting work I've been doing. So men have come through that also, but they've been recommended. So I do work with men who want, you know, my programs are geared towards women, but the principles are the same. And I find a lot of men also have the same issues, but they come from it from a different angle. So yeah, but I have been working with men, yes.
Amazing. Well, yes, it's been great having you in the studio, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
You're another ultimate gold digger. Yeah, so we've had Yvette Ankrah in the studio, but time's going, guys, so we've got to go. But we will be back in the studio next week. I have an amazing woman all the way from Nigeria. Amazing PR guru. We're going to hear her story next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. You've been watching Gold Diggers, and my name is Miss New Love.